Today we're going to be making this beautiful bookish tote bag. I've also made this book lover tote bag. Both of these projects are designed for a flatbed embroidery machine and use a pre-made bag. I'll walk you through all the steps. The designs come out of the Kimberbell Blossoms and Bouquet Bookmark kit. They're bonus designs in the back of this kit. Grab your kit and let's make a couple of beautiful tote bags. Let's go through our supplies. I have a canvas tote blank. I'll link the kind that I'm using today in the description box below. It's a little bit on the thin side, I'll admit. I kind of went cheap. I bought a 5-pack of these and wanted to make sure this would work. It says it holds up to 10 pounds. Make sure whichever blank you're using, it's clean and ironed and ready to go. Optional step, I will be lining my tote since it's really thin, and I'm going to use Fusible Fleece to do this. If you buy a sturdier tote or a tote with a lining, you won't need to do that. We're going to do our embroidery. The design today I'm using is this bookish design. It's the 8x12 bookish appliqué, and this comes from Kimberbell's Blossoms and Bouquet Bookmark kit. There's bonus designs in here. There's some appliqué, so I have my scissors, my paper tape, the fabric and thread that I picked out, some extra fabric. I'll go over what that's used for as we construct our tote. On the back of your instructions is a really nice guide, what stabilizers to use. I looked at the fabric tote, the canvas wall hanging, zipper pouch. They all three recommend a sticky back tearaway. I don't have the sticky back tearaway. So what I opted to use is a medium weight cutaway. I didn't feel like the light mesh was going to provide enough support for this design. It's a larger design. It has a lot of embroidery. It's got some heavy satin stitching. I did use that on the first tote that I made. Let me show you. Here's my test tote. I'm going to go in for a close-up. You can see the line where my stabilizer is behind the embroidery. I used a medium weight cutaway, and it's pretty thick and it's white. I chose to line this tote with the Fusible Fleece because it was really thin. This is also white, so you've got that double white. If you come in really close, you can see that line, but other than that, it came out great. This is designed to be a fun project. Use fabric from your stash. If you've already got a bag, grab one of those. You can also make a bag. Let's go ahead and get started. If you have this kit after you make the bookmarks, I believe there's enough fabric left. There's a lot of fabric left over to make this exactly as pictured. I chose to use some fabric from my stash, so that means I had to adjust some of my thread colors. How do you do that in one of these embroidery patterns? Here's the thread key to stitch per the original design. Now you can see this book is orange, not orange. My colors are very different. Some of the easiest ones to figure out are there's a dark green and a light green, there's a brown, there's a linen. Those are all going to stay the same, and the white because they're neutral. Where you have to make adjustments is for things like the satin stitching around the book and what you want your flowers to look like based on the fabric that you chose. When you turn the page, you have your step-by-step instructions. What you can do is read through, look for those color key, like this is the page detail. I know mine's going to be similar. I've got a brown for that. But I'm looking for things like here, the cover detail and cover satin outline. So I know I'm going to need a different color. What I do is I take my fabric over to my thread wall, and I've got a lot of thread, and I will fully admit I bought my thread when I first started, and a lot of these are inexpensive. I'll put some information below on the threads that I've tried. I have not had a problem with any of these. They work great. You get a kit with a whole bunch of colors. I love having all the options. And again, just step through, look through your instructions. Like I know my flower fabrics that I picked are going to have some outline and detail. Coordinate your fabrics. Since I'm not using this orange instead of peach, I looked at this color. I've got some yellow in here. There are yellow undertones in this fabric, so I pulled the yellow. Let's go ahead and get our tote ready to stitch. This project is designed for a flatbed embroidery machine. You can't put the bag on your hoop as is because you'll stitch through both parts of the bag. In order to use this bag or any pre-made bag that's completely sewn on your flatbed, we're going to want to cut these outside seams out. Turn your bag inside out, make sure it's nice and flat. Press it if you haven't already. Get your handles out of the way. You don't want to accidentally cut off your handles. For this bag we're going to be making today, I'm going to cut mine pretty close to the stitch line here, and then I'm going to be adding 2.5 inch fabric strips. So when the bag is done, it's going to be wider than the original bag. If you like the exact size of your bag and you still want to add the fabric strips, then you want to measure how much you're going to cut off, taking into account when you sew your fabric strip on, you're going to have a seam allowance. I'm just making this easy. Cut the sides off. Make sure you leave enough in the middle for your design. Let's go ahead and get rid of these seams. You want to line up the line of your ruler across the top of your bag. Make sure it's nice and straight. I'm looking at where the seam is. I can go a little bit more this way. That looks good. It's lined up on top. It's lined up on bottom. It's got a little fold. It's fine. We can double check once we're done cutting. I'm going to flip the bag over and cut the other side. I flip the bag over, re-straighten, match up these ends because I already cut these ends, flatten, and again, it's not the best put together bag. I've got this weird little bump. I'm going to go ahead and get as close as I can to that, make sure I'm straight on top, and then we'll go ahead and cut off that other seam. I'm close as I can get to being straight on top and straight on bottom. The bag's a little bit wonky. I'm going to go ahead and cut that off. What you can do to check, measure each section, from the outside of the handle going out, and see if you're relatively close to being even. That's at 3 3/4. This is at, it looks like almost 4. Let me measure that again. Yeah, it's just over 3 3/4. So I'm going to take just a little bit off right at the top here. It looks like my cut may not be perfectly straight. Okay, I've trimmed this side. Let's go ahead and measure. 3 3/4. That looks good. And then this was 3 3/4. Now you can open your bag and it will work in the regular embroidery hoop on a regular flatbed embroidery machine. You want to loosen your embroidery hoop. Take the center out. I'm using an 8x12 hoop. It's an 8x12 design. Before we can hoop our bag, we want to find the center so we can center it in our embroidery hoop. The easiest way to do this, I think, is to fold it in half and fold it in half again. Fold it in half, kind of press it, fold it in half again. I can already see this isn't the best constructed bag. It'll be okay. Fold it in half again. We're going to be adding those side panels. We'll be able to make any corrections. I can see the center. I'm actually going to put down a small piece of the Kimberbell paper tape, and I'm going to mark my center. And then when I take it to my machine, I'll use this to center my design, and then I'll peel it off before I start. I'm using an 8x12 hoop today. I've already taken the center piece out. Your stabilizer will go down first. Again, I'm using a medium cutaway. If you've got that recommended stabilizer, that'll probably be easier. That looks good. Let me go like this. It needs to come over this way a little bit. This does not have to be perfect. Absolutely 100% does not need to be perfect. When you go to place this part of your hoop on, you probably have markings on this hoop as well. Looks like my design's a little bit low. I'll go ahead and pull it up a little bit. And I want to make sure that my stabilizer is indeed fully in the hoop. So fuss with it, get it how you like it. You can be as perfectly centered or as close to centered as you like. I'm all for getting it close. Now, if you have your hoop like it's bouncing out like this, it just won't go down all the way. I have to loosen it more. That's because of the handles at the top. They're a little on the thick side. I fussed with it. I made sure I'm straight across the top using this part. I'm pretty close to centered. I'm happy with that. I would say it's more important to make sure it's straight and not in there crooked. This design does have text that runs straight across the bottom. Always tighten with your screwdriver. Make sure your hoop is tight. Make sure the two pieces are pressed together. You don't want your hoop bouncing apart while you're embroidering. I've had that happen before. It's really hard to get back to where you were when that happens. Now that you have your project hooped, you want to take care of a few things before you start embroidering. This is in the way, and this is in the way. I have some binder clips. I have this cute little jar. If you're into cross stitch, I have a tutorial on this on my channel. I'll link it below. But I'm going to use these clips. They're an oversized clip. And I'm going to just get everything out of the way and clip it. So, you know, just fold it, clip it, and then I'm going to roll this and clip it. I've tightened my hoop. I have all my fabric and my handles clipped and out of the way. I'm ready to embroider. We're going to jump to the completed embroidery project in this video. I have other videos on my channel showing how to lay your fabric and do applique. I'll go ahead and link some more videos below. If you would like a standalone tutorial that's short, showing how to do a placement line, a piece of fabric, a tack down, and trim, let me know and I can make that up and put that on my channel. I'm going to embroider my design and then we'll come back to bag construction. Here's my design. It came out great. I'm going to go ahead and get it out of the hoop and we'll move on to the next step. This came out great. There's no puckering at all. It'll be interesting to see when I line it if it's that fusible fleece that causes the puckering. What I'm going to do is turn it over, and this is a cutaway, so I'm going to trim all my extra stabilizer out. I'm winding bobbins in the background if you hear a weird noise. This is all trimmed. I'm going to fold this in half. I'm going to flip it over to the front. Looks good. What I'm checking for at this point is the sides to make sure everything is even. Before I sew my fabric strips, I can tell this is not even on this side, so I'm going to want to trim this up. What you need for the next step are some fabric strips. I initially cut 4. I've already sewn them together so they're longer. You want them to be a little bit longer than your bag, and I'll explain why. Now the reason I sewed them together is because remember your bag opens, so the whole bag will lay out on this fabric strip. You need them to be a little bit longer because when you sew them on, you don't want to trim them right at the top. Then you'll have a raw edge of fabric up here. When we sew them on and before we do our lining, you know, you'll sew right sides together and flip. You're going to want a little bit to fold over so you have a finished look at the top. Otherwise, if you have it like this, you're going to have that raw fabric edge at the top, which if it doesn't bother you, that's fine. But I want it to look a little bit cleaner. I'm going to show you what I did on my test bag. This is why I did a test bag. This one, when I attached the fabric, I did trim it right to the top, and that's when I realized, oops, I have a raw edge. So I cut a small piece of fabric, folded it under, ironed it on with some stitch witchery, and folded it over the top to give me a nice, clean looking finished edge. So if you do cut it right to the top, it's okay, all is not lost. You can always put another piece of fabric over it. Unless you get up right in front of this, you're never going to see that. I'm going to recommend pinning. For this, I've got a little seam because I had to put 2 pieces together. I'm going to put that seam on the bottom seam, and I'm going to pin this side, and I'll pin this side before I take it to my sewing machine. I have both sides pinned. right sides together. I'm going to stitch with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You can stitch with whatever seam allowance you want. Now remember how I talked about the overage up here because we're going to do a fold to make it look pretty. I'm going to continue stitching off of the extra because I want that stitch line. It's going to help me when I press my fabric and when we create that top fold. I've got my sides sewn on. I'm going to take them to the iron and press out. When I get to this top piece, I'm going to fold this over and press right along that seam line or stitch line right there. Here's everything pressed. See how I pressed there? Like that. What I'm going to do with this is flip it over like that and get that nice finished edge. And I probably don't always do things the way a professional would. I do things the way I can and with what I have. I have some stitch Witchery, and I'll hold that up in a minute. I'm going to put a little bit in here, tuck it underneath, iron it down, and trim off the excess. I'm going to line this bag so the inside doesn't necessarily need to be as fancy looking. I'll show you what that product looks like. This is Stitch Witchery. This is by Dritz. It comes on a big roll. I use it a lot. It's great. I learned about this many years ago. My mom used to sew our clothes, and if you're in a pinch and you need a hem, this stuff is great. It will not come out. What I'm going to do is cut a small piece to go underneath here. I'll show you that. I went ahead and just eyeballed it and cut some pieces off. I'm going to put it on the inside like that. Fold this over. Make sure nothing's exposed to your iron. So if you've got a shorter piece and this is sticking out, you're going to need to trim that off. You don't want to iron over it. And I'm going to iron that down. That's going to give it that nice finished look on the top. I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you. Back from the ironing board, here's what it looks like from the front. Beautiful, nice finished edge. Looks great. It's ironed down. There's a little extra. You can cut that off if you want. I'm not going to because I'm going to line this bag. If you bought a higher quality bag and it's nice and thick, you don't need to line it. You can skip over the lining section. What I'm going to do to line this is use some Fusible Fleece. This is an iron-on product. I like it. It's easy to use. It's fast. I don't want to have to create a fancy pants liner. It's got a nubby side. This is the side that's going to go against your fabric and get ironed down. I do have to measure, and I'm going to cut a piece roughly the size of the inside. I'm going to cut it a little bit shorter across the top. It doesn't need to go right to the top. I don't necessarily want it visible, so I'll cut it about here, and then it's going to get pressed down. I've got my Fusible Fleece laid out. This step, again, is optional. I'm doing this as a way to line this bag because the bag's a little bit on the thin side. I'm going to take this to the ironing board and press. Kind of boring. You got to go like this for each section. And these are the instructions for the Fusible Fleece. You can see it says to press firmly in place for approximately 10 seconds. Repeat lifting and slightly overlapping. If you have a mini iron, this will take you a long time. Get your big iron out for this. And like it says, just press, press, and press. I'm going to do that, and then we'll come back and we'll assemble the bag. A quick note about adding your lining. Before you press everything down, check and make sure there's nothing caught underneath, like black dog hairs, which I had to lint roll and pick out. And I also cut it a little bit short on either side because we're going to put right sides together and we're going to stitch. You don't have to do that. I just know it'll be a little bit easier on my sewing machine and the side seams will be less bulky. It's perfectly all right if you cover the whole thing. I just chose to do that to make it a little easier to sew together. Got my lining ironed on. I thought I'd show. It did end up puckering, but I tried this spray that I have. This is Flatter spray, and I buy the unscented. They make them in a variety of scents, but anything that has a scent makes me sneeze. So I grabbed this off the shelf and thought I'd give it a try, and lo and behold, it took care of it. So then I pulled the first bag that I did, and I just sprayed that area, and ironed it, and it took out all the little puckers. Looks great. I'm so happy. Now we're going to put our bag together. You want to fold your bag right sides together. Make sure your handles are out of the way. Don't accidentally get your handles caught in the seams. I can see that even when I fold this along that bottom seam, this side matches up really nice. This side's a little crooked. The top of the bag, again, these are not the best bags. It's a little crooked, but what I'm going to do when I sew, I'm going to pin so all of my side seams match, and when you use it as a bag, you'll never know that they don't match perfectly. I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam. Then I have a serger, so I'll add a little bit of serging on this on top of that 1/4 inch seam. If you do not have a serger, I recommend doing the straight seam first with the smaller stitch length, maybe about a 2. If you normally sew with a 2.5, I'd bring it down to a 2. And then once you have that done, put a zigzag stitch over it. You can run your zigzag kind of on and off the edge. If all you have is a straight stitch machine, I would just run 2 seams down it, just in case, to make it secure. I thought I'd show you my serger. This is a Baby Lock Acclaim. It uses 4 threads. I have to hold the camera in one hand, so we'll go slow. It has 2 needles. You can see one needle is higher than the other. That's the way they're supposed to be. When you get to the end with the serger, you actually want to run it off and create a tail. And then you can trim that. At the bottom of the bag, I go ahead and I take that long tail and I'll tie it because this is inside the bag. Up at the top, after I trim to keep the threads from unraveling, I'll put a little bit of fray check on. I've got everything sewn, serged, and the fray check is dry. I'm going to go ahead and turn this right side out. We are all done. It looks so pretty. I'm so pleased with this. You can customize these, pick your favorite fabrics, your favorite colors. Let me show you the other one as well. Again, this was the first one I made. They're nice and big. They're a good size. And you can see they're a little bit differently sized because the bags were a little different. Both of these designs, both the Bookish and the Book Lover, were bonus designs in the Blossoms and Bouquet Bookmark. I hope you've enjoyed making your custom Bookish tote bag with me. Make sure you like and subscribe, and please share. I'm adding more and more tutorials, especially for those of you who like to do embroidery projects. I'm going to have lots more exciting embroidery projects coming your way. Thank you again for joining me. Product links are below. Bye everybody.